In the first part of this story, we saw how Persia went from ancient superpower, survived Greeks, Arabs, and Mongols, and already in the 20th century decided to officially change the name from Persia to Iran, a move that seemed merely diplomatic, but was actually a declaration of identity. We are a living nation, not a museum piece. Now we're going to pick up from there. Understanding how the authoritarian modernization of the shahs, oil, and foreign intervention led to the 1979 revolution, the creation of the Islamic Republic, and to today's Iran that supports armed groups, faces sanctions, and sits at the center of Middle East crises. Now we're going to see how Iran stopped being a pro-Western monarchy and became an Islamic Republic on a collision course with the US. After Reza Shah is forced to abdicate in 1941, during World War II, his son Mohammad Reza Shah takes over. He continues the modernization project, but even more aligned with American and British interests. In the early 1950s, an important figure emerges, Mohammad Mossadegh, the Prime Minister who tries to nationalize oil, taking control out of British hands. To nationalize means to transfer control of a company or resource to the state, instead of leaving it in the hands of private or foreign companies. In 1953, a coup supported by the CIA and the British overthrows Mossadegh and strengthens the Shah's power. For many Iranians, this becomes a trauma, the feeling that the West decides who runs the country. In the following years, oil wealth grows, but is concentrated in the elite linked to the palace and the military. The secret police, called Savak, hunts down, tortures, and eliminates opponents. Modernization speeds up, but a large part of the population doesn't feel included. Not politically, not economically, not culturally. Opposition then starts to organize in unlikely groups. University students influenced by leftist ideas, traditional bazaar merchants upset with the concentration of power, secular intellectuals critical of authoritarianism, and above all Shia clerics who see the Shah as a tyrannical ruler submissive to the West. Shia Islam is one of the two main branches of Islam, alongside Sunni Islam. Shias believe that legitimate leadership of the Islamic community should have followed the lineage of Ali, Muhammad's son-in-law. In Iran, the majority religion is Shia Islam, and the Ayatollahs, high religious leaders, have enormous moral authority. Among them, Ayatollah Khomeini stands out. He is exiled, ends up in France, but his messages against the Shah circulate throughout the country on cassette tapes. The criticism speaks of injustice, corruption, submission to the US, and the abandonment of Islamic values. Starting in 1978, the country boils over. Strikes in the oil sector paralyze the economy. Massive demonstrations take over the streets. Violent crackdowns, such as the episode known as Black Friday, when soldiers opened fire on protesters in Tehran, only increase the outrage. In January 1979, the Shah leaves the country. In February, Khomeini returns triumphantly, welcomed by millions. In a few months, the monarchy is abolished and a referendum approves the creation of an Islamic Republic. A new form of government is born, Velayat-e-Faqih, the guardianship of the Islamic jurist, in which the supreme religious leader has the final say on the state's major decisions. In theory, there is a republic with a president and parliament. But above all of that stand a supreme leader and a guardian council, all clerics who filter laws and candidates. A theocracy, a system where religious authorities occupy the center of power, is established. Diplomatic breakups follow almost immediately. Iran severs relations with Israel, which had previously been an ally of the Shah, and starts treating it as an enemy. Relations with the US collapse for good after the hostage crisis at the US embassy in Tehran. The internal struggle between authoritarian modernization and religious identity has exploded. The result is a country with the same name and the same millennia-old history, but with a new political identity that positions itself as an alternative to the West and to the Sunni world led by Saudi Arabia. And it enters a collision course that you still feel today. In every piece of news about sanctions, drone attacks, or fiery speeches. But how did this new revolutionary Islamic Iran come to be seen as a sponsor of armed groups in several countries at the same time? That's what we're going to break down now. Now we're going to connect this whole story with the Iran you see in the headlines. Armed groups, conflict with Israel, sanctions, and the so-called axis of resistance. After 1979, the leaders of the Islamic Republic begin to see themselves as defenders of the oppressed, and in particular of Shia Muslims spread throughout the Middle East. Instead of confronting Israel or the United States directly in open wars, Iran adopts a different strategy: proxy war. This means supporting allied groups in other countries with money, training, and weapons to project power and pressure adversaries without putting its own army directly into combat. This network of allies is called by Iran itself the axis of resistance. The idea is, resist the presence and influence of the U.S., Israel, and certain Arab regimes seen as submissive to the West. In Lebanon, the main ally is Hezbollah, perhaps the strongest of these groups. It emerged in the 1980s during the Lebanese Civil War and the Israeli occupation. Today, it's a political and military actor with heavy weapons, missiles, and major influence supplied by Tehran. In Iraq, Iran supports Shia militias that gained strength especially after the fall of Saddam Hussein in 2003. These militias help Iran influence Iraqi politics and sometimes attack troops or bases linked to the US. In Syria, the regime of Bashar al-Assad stayed in power largely thanks to Iranian and Hezbollah support, money, advisors, and fighters. In return, Iran secures a corridor of influence that runs from its own territory to the Mediterranean through Iraq and Syria. In Yemen, Iran backs the Houthis, a mostly Shiite group fighting a coalition led by Saudi Arabia. These Houthis have already attacked Saudi targets and key shipping routes in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. On the other side, the West and Israel classify most of these groups as terrorist organizations because they see these attacks as threats to civilians, trade routes, and regional allies. For Tehran, though, they are legitimate resistance movements against occupation, imperialism, and oppression. For Israel, the picture looks like a slowly tightening military encirclement. Hezbollah armed to the north on the Lebanese border. Pro-Iran militias present in Iraq and Syria to the east, and indirect pressure to the south. It feels like Iran is building a network of military pressure all around the country. For the United States, Iran becomes the main sponsor of instability in the region, able to hit American interests through allies without taking direct responsibility. On top of that, Iran's nuclear program makes everything more intense. If Iran gets a nuclear weapon, the balance of power in the Middle East changes dramatically. That creates a cycle that's still going on. Heavy economic sanctions, sabotage against nuclear facilities, assassinations of Iranian scientists, cyber attacks, missiles and drones, traded in low-intensity conflicts. These are modern echoes of a very old story in which Iran tries to stay relevant without being dominated. And here we can finally close the big Persia-Iran paradox. When you hear Persia, you probably picture Cyrus freeing the Jews in Babylon, fine carpets, the poetry of Rumi and Hafez, science in observatories, delicate miniatures, an empire that prided itself on a certain level of tolerance. When you hear Iran, the association is different. Khomeini speaking against the US, missiles in parades, women protesting against compulsory veiling, sanctions, the nuclear program, armed groups spread across the Middle East. But it's the same country, the same land, the same plateau, the same Persian language still recited in poems, the same culture that absorbed Macedonians, Arabs, and Mongols without losing its core. The question isn't which one is the real Iran. The question is understanding that both exist at the same time, the Persia of carpets, poetry and philosophy, living side by side with the Iran of missiles, sanctions and an Islamic Republic. And it's this tension between ancient tradition and revolutionary modern project that makes this country so hard to ignore and so hard to squeeze into a simple label. When you look at a map and see Iran, you're not just seeing a problematic state in the news. You're seeing the result of 4,000 years of conquests, invasions, rebirths and internal struggles that still shape every crisis that pops up on your timeline. Now we're going to tie together this journey you've just been on. If you've made it this far, you've already realized that Iran doesn't fit into a single headline or a simple label like villain or ally. Behind every story about missiles, sanctions or protests, there's a much longer history running in the background. The civilization that survived Alexander, the Arabs and the Mongols can't be understood just through today's news cycle. The change of name from Persia to Iran was only the visible part of a much deeper battle over identity, power and respect. Behind every crisis and every headline, there is a narrative more than 4,000 years old still in motion. So how did Persia become Iran, and why does it still matter? Because the change of name, regime and image didn't erase this place's soul. It just left the world even more confused about who it is. The Iran that backs armed groups and debates its nuclear program is the same one that gave the world poems, religious ideas, and political concepts that shaped 3 major religions. For you, which name carries more weight today, Persia or Iran? Drop your answer in the comments and tell me which chapter of this story you'd like to see explored in more depth on this channel. If you like this kind of historical journey that explains today's news, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and share this video with someone who watched part 1 and still doesn't see how it connects to the headlines now. On our next journey, we can dive into the Iran-Iraq War, the origins of the State of Israel, or the fall of the Ottoman Empire. You choose in the comments. See you on the next journey through the history that still shapes the present.